After my recent video about some of the less obvious trails you can blaze through in your game of Baldur's Gate 3, I bet some of you were left wondering specifically about that alternate companion dialogue from the Goblin Camp celebration. Or perhaps you've already started your own evil game to find out for yourself how your companions feel about slaughtering the Druid Grove. In case you need to know from a secondhand source though, because you can't bear the idea of having to cause so much carnage on so many innocents, I'm here to show you what you've missed, and throwing in my own 2 cents about every encounter as I'm ought to do now and then. So, right off the bat, there will be no dialogue from Will, as he leaves your party no matter what if you go down the goblin path. There's also nothing new from Lae'zel, which was a little disappointing. But with that said, your other companions have widely diverging dialogue options, and it's interesting to see how they all take to the idea of partying with goblins. Astarion, for one, absolutely loves it.
Well, hello. Welcome to my humble party. What's your poison? Red? White? Ah, a good, full-bodied choice. So, what are we drinking to? Other than a pile of corpses. To victory. Delicious. So, what happens next?
It's hard to miss that Astarion is having a great time. One also has to wonder if he hasn't been snacking on the corpses laid about on the ground either. I don't mind his delight in something rather unsavory because I think it suits him. I do appreciate the fact that he seems to sway in his alignment, i.e. sometimes he chooses to be good, like his approval in helping the Myconids, for instance. Still, he's always funniest to me when he's making fun of someone else's misfortune. I still love his response to what happens with Mayrina's husband the most.
Oh, yes! Did you see her face? Amazing.
I also noticed that his voice seems much more seductive from the get-go. Everything he says sounds as though he's already trying to woo you. He's also a lot more playful when he says,
So, what are we drinking to? Other than a pile of corpses.
I've never heard someone sound so hot when they're referring casually to a pile of corpses. His tone comes off as a little whimsical, and it's obvious that he's enjoying himself in this atmosphere compared to the almost mopey attitude he has during your early discussion at the tiefling celebration. The choice of what to toast to feels a little shallow. No matter what you pick, there isn't much else added to the dialogue, but I do love when Astarion says delicious.
Delicious.
As most of you know, I wrote a fanfic with just that same title. Astarion gets right down to it after that, and you get a couple good options. My favorites were to pick either what would you like to happen, or I had planned to bed you. Both responses are pretty good. I'll give you a look at them both here.
Oh, a little talking, a little drinking, and once everyone else is asleep, we get to know each other. Indeed you will, my love. Indeed you will.
I personally like the idea of hanging out with Astarion all night that is implied here. In most of the other scenes, the dialogue feels like you're just going to meet up after everyone goes to sleep, but otherwise you're not going to see each other much. I think it makes a lot more sense to be spending the night talking and drinking and then, well, getting to know each other better. It just feels more natural. Now let's take a quick look at the other option.
Well, I'd hate to get in the way of a well-laid plan, so to speak. Let's wait until things quieten down a bit. Once the others are asleep, we'll find each other.
This line of dialogue has a good pun attached to it, but still goes back to the original, let's meet up after everyone is quieted down bit. I still prefer the previous one here about spending the entire night together though. We even get a different line if you go back to him. Instead of his normal, you are eager, aren't you? He says this instead.
Not quite yet, love. Let's wait until they're asleep.
I love it. I love that they gave all new dialogue for him in this situation too. While that was my romance for this playthrough, there's still a lot of new dialogue from other companions as well who are not having anywhere near as good a time as Astarion is. So let's take a look at how Shadowheart feels about the whole ordeal. I'm guessing she disapproves.
What a glorious celebration. Hip deep in gore. And you're carousing with Astarion. The corpses probably do something extra for him, don't they? Not that I'm judging. I have this. What's wrong with enjoying a gift from our guests? Maybe, if I down enough of this swill, it'll pickle the worm in my skull. We set a pack of refugees on fire. A child could have done it. Not exactly an ambush for the ages.
Shadowheart's mind is drenched in drink and confusion. She's killed before, enjoyed it even, but now an ill, twisting feeling lingers in her gut, one that has nothing to do with the wine.
Guilty? Ridiculous. What's there to be guilty for? My goddess smiles on such bloodshed. Just let me enjoy a drink in peace.
Shadowheart sounds strangely guilty. She comments snidely on my looming affair with Astarion and mentions that the corpses must be doing it for him. But they certainly aren't doing it for Shadowheart. She is getting tore up, drinking herself senseless, which is kind of odd, isn't it? She's supposed to be a bad guy, and yet she has a lot of trouble with what you did to the tieflings. If you recall in her original dialogue, she is surprised that she was happy to save them. Using Illithid wisdom on her proves to show that even Shadowheart herself is confused with her response. I said she seemed guilty, and she got kind of loud with me. Like, how dare you call me guilty? Her goddess approves of such bloodshed, but it's painfully obvious that she is not into this at all. It might be possible that I just didn't have a good enough approval rating with her at the time. I don't recall off the top of my head, to be honest, but I tried to see if she would sleep with me so I could check out if there was any new dialogue, and she wouldn't. Take a look.
Maybe. But I know better than to share my bed drunk. Unless you meant to raise my spirits by other means. No more war tonight, I think. I'd prefer the quiet, if it's all the same to you.
I only tried a couple of times, but it seemed no matter what, she was intent to be left alone with her drink. I think we can easily take away that Shadowheart is not as bad as she'd like you to think she is. And this whole ordeal has really bothered her. It really makes me wonder where she stands in terms of her faith in Shar as well. If she is not truly evil, how did she come to believe in her in the first place? I'd love to know more about her, honestly, and can't wait for more of her personal quest. Even though she is a pain in the ass, she's still an interesting and complicated character. Our last companion interaction is with Gale, and oh boy, he is not happy. And there are a couple different ways this dialogue can go, so let's take a look at one possible direction.
This is the worst moment. When the screams of the dying have faded, and the conquering hordes howl and yelp as they come to their vile climax. Massacre. A spectacle of slaughter. And I participated. What are these bloody stumps that used to be such delicate harpists of the weave? No! Two shadows are darkening my soul. The shadow within, and the shadow without. You. You led me down this path. It's time to stop making excuses. I don't know myself anymore. All this, it's not who I am. Around you, I'm not who I want to be. I should leave.
I was sitting here in my chair, behind my role-playing facade, making an awkward seal face as Gale ripped my head off. He refers to himself as a bloody killer, thoroughly unhappy with the celebration unfolding around him. Most of the responses you can choose here are really evil sounding too, saying he has a knack for it or that he's seen his own true nature. I chose to tell him he was always a killer and has a talent for it, but he was having none of that and pointed the finger back in my direction, blaming me for everything. I went more diplomatic with my next choice, telling him I was sorry he felt that way. And at this point he says he doesn't like who he is around me and that he should leave. Whew. Now at this point I'm thinking, crap, my best chance of winning the role is deception, but I'm going to feel like such a jerk having to say this to the poor guy. After some quick consideration, I take the leap and thankfully win the role.
God damn you. You're right. Few things are more powerful than the will to live, but carnage such as this. The shadow within is spreading like poison, corrupting kindness and compassion. Perhaps you'll understand me better when you know the truth of my condition. Perhaps when you know the truth, you'll regret wanting me to stay. Come find me another night, and I'll tell you everything. Tonight I need to wash my hands of blood, and my mind of shattering memories.
He agrees to stay with me out of necessity to survive and ties his disgust for himself into his confession about the truth of his condition. Gale ends the conversation by saying he needs to wash his hands of the blood and try to forget the bad memories. I have to admit, Gale made me feel pretty awful here. He's very obviously the good guy when you check his approval. He always hates when you do bad things, but is always throwing out that high approval for doing good deeds. It's insane to think that you can actually twist his alignment just to get him to stay with you, and it makes me feel pretty shitty to do it. But hey, he's my wizard and I need him. Sorry, Gale. It's not like this in every game at least. Remember the good times on my other characters? Now here's what happens if that roll doesn't go quite so well.
What chances I have, I'll take them. I'd rather roll the dice than deliver all this death. Farewell.
If you fail the roll, you'll fail to convince him to stay and he will outright leave. There isn't much in the way of goodbyes. He's just going to take his chances and be rid of you. So make sure you have a save in case you decided to try an evil game out for yourself, because Gale isn't happy at all with this chain of events. I also made a recording of talking to all of the goblins for those who were curious and weren't about to try this game out themselves.
Never seen a true soul in action before. I'd follow you to the hells and back. Once we're rested, we should carve our way right to Baldur's Gate. Whole world needs to know what we did here.
You smoked them all out like it was nothing, true soul. Imagine what a disciple could do.
Never thought I'd be falling in a drow of my own free will, and then come out of battle and the absolute smiles on ya.
Ah, yes, lay your adoration upon me. There is nothing but love for you from these goblins, and they have no problem heaping praises upon you. They have even erected a shrine to the Absolute inside of your camp, and you can talk to the trio of goblins standing next to it for an extra scene.
Let the Absolute hear your prayers, and let the blood of his enemies flow over you.
As the symbol glows, power courses through you. Authority.
Certainly.
Something stirs deep within you, hungry and alert.
Glory to the Absolute!
They've covered the shrine in blood, and if you speak to the middle goblin, there is a really evil option where you can use your illithid power to make them sacrifice themselves upon the altar, to give it more blood.
True soul, Mom. A present straight from the battlefield.
The mark glows, but you feel nothing in response.
Had to cut off the stiff's fingers to get it. A pleasure. My name's Ripper. Put in a good word for me at Moonrise, yeah?
Ripper even has a gift for you, and just to make you feel extra bad, it's Alfira's loot. Another goblin will mention that he saw a bird flying over the camp. He mentions the druids not messing with them if any were still alive, so it's pretty obvious this is intended to be Halsin. There's also the potential romance with Minthara here, should you choose to take it, but I've already covered that in another video, so I'm not going to rehash it again. I do have to say, while this is definitely the evil game, it's really awesome that they put the work into making these completely separate paths with completely different dialogue as well. It's still disappointing that you aren't able to stay in place as a goblin leader after this celebration, but I'm happy to see such incredible variation. This is not a game choice I would typically make, but I like to check them out mostly to learn more about the game and see what's available so I can tell you guys more about it. I do have to wonder where the evil path is going to take our characters that chose it though. What will this supposed test with the absolute be, and why does it seem so abrupt when it ends? Better yet, how will picking an evil option like this affect our party members? Lae'zel and Astarion seem nonplussed, but Shadowheart and Gale are seriously disturbed by their actions. Will this choice ultimately affect them down the line? I think back to the quests to harden Alistair and Liliana from Dragon Age Origins, and wonder if this is one such possible flag. Maybe it's more like you're darkening them instead, making them tend towards being comfortable with bad things. I'm very curious to see where it's going in the future. I'm probably going to have to go back and see if it's possible to romance Gale on the evil game too, if it's even possible at all. I imagine it would be almost like a rival romance, where he bottom line hates you. I'm so excited for patch 4 to come out this week. I'm actually hoping it comes out Thursday, so I have more time to play it though. I also wanted to make a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. If any of you would like to join the family, you can click my Patreon link in the info section below. Every little bit helps, and you'll get access to more updates as well as unfiltered content. See you guys later!